Grief was in the stands. There was a time when the sound of football meant safety to me. Not safety in a profound sense, not emotional safety, but childhood safety. Familiarity, rhythm, noise drifting through Saturday afternoons while mum cooked in the kitchen. The distant roar of commentary through television, men arguing over lineups as though civilization itself depended on a left back having a decent first touch. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise was me, a little South London girl completely obsessed with Ian Wright. Before I understood tactics, before I understood marriage, before I understood grief. I just knew I liked the way he played. There was something about him that felt human, not polished, not robotic, not born into privilege and precision. He felt reachable somehow, emotional, joyful, like someone who remembered what it cost to get there. So when he moved from Palace to Arsenal, I followed too. Not physically, obviously, I was a child, but emotionally, completely. Football became part of my internal landscape after that. Match days, Highbury, stadium, banter. My dad was actually a Liverpool fan, but he still bought me tickets to watch Arsenal play at Highbury from time to time. I'll never forget sitting in that stadium for the last Champions League match ever played on Highbury soil against Villarreal. It was around my birthday, nearly 20 years ago. My dad bought the tickets and Arsenal won that night and reached the Champions League final for the very first time. I remember the noise, the feeling, the electricity of it all. Football belonged to a version of me untouched by adulthood then, untouched by survival. And then life happened, or perhaps more accurately, life attached itself to football. Because in one season of my life, football was no longer just a hobby within the household. It was a full ecosystem, a religion, a weekly ceremony where entire weekends structured around fixtures, forms, tables, fantasy league scores, group chats, commentary, and analysis. There are women who can tell you the exact moment they realised they were lonely in a relationship. Mine weren't that dramatic. It was quieter than that. It was sitting beside someone who could recall a midfielder's pass completion rate from 3 seasons ago while silently wondering why so much emotional energy seemed available for external passions while emotional connection at home still somehow felt difficult to reach. It was realising that someone could know everything about 11 men on the pitch while emotional intimacy within close relationships could feel strangely out of reach. At first, I don't think I consciously connected those things. Your nervous system is clever like that. It protects you from fully naming realities you are not ready to grieve. So instead, football simply became noise. Noise associated with emotional absence, with waiting, with feeling emotionally single inside a relationship. And slowly, without realising it, I stopped watching. Not intentionally, not rebelliously, not with some dramatic declaration. It just disappeared quietly. Years passed. And then yesterday, I looked up and realised that Arsenal were about to lift the league trophy for the first time in 22 years. 22. The same rough time span that seemed to hold entire versions of me inside it. Young adult Keisha, first time mum Keisha, married Keisha, performing through pain Keisha, survival mode Keisha, and now sitting on her bed writing this Keisha. And suddenly I felt emotional in a way I could not fully explain. Not because of football alone, but because I realised something startling. I'd lost access to parts of myself that existed before pain. Football had belonged to me before it became associated with disappointment, before marriage, before grief, before trying to hold emotional intimacy together with one pair of hands. And now, here I was, 22 years later, living 5 minutes away from the very place where Arsenal will lift the trophy at Selhurst Park, where Ian Wright's journey had first began. Full circle. A little girl from South London once followed Ian Wright from Palace to Arsenal because it made her happy. And now a grown woman scrolling through reels, realising healing is sometimes less about becoming someone new and more about returning to the rooms inside yourself that you abandoned to survive. The strangest part of all of this is my son. He has football in him naturally. Not in a forced way, not in an overparented way like my child will fulfill abandoned dreams way. Just naturally. Before he could fully form sentences, he could dribble. At 5 years old, he runs with older children and keeps pace effortlessly. His kick has weight behind it. People notice. And sometimes when I watch him play, joy and grief arrive together. Because somewhere deep inside me lives the fear that children can sometimes mistake giftedness for currency, that they may unconsciously begin associating achievement with connection, not because children are manipulative, but because they are relational. That fear breaks my heart more than I can articulate. But then there's another part of me, the healing part, that knows something too. A gift is not dangerous simply because grief once grew around it. Football itself is not the wound. The impact of absence was the wound. Emotional inconsistency felt like the wound. The experience of feeling unseen became the wound. And perhaps reclamation means refusing to hand over entire pieces of your identity to grief simply because grief once sat beside them. So last night, while North London celebrated and flares light up in the sky somewhere not too far from here, I sat with all the versions of myself at once. The little girl, the grieving woman, the mother, the writer, and somewhere in the middle of all of them, quietly returning home to herself, is a football fan.